I don't want to solve this problem in full, but I do want you to understand the underlying method to solve this particular problem here. And I do want you to answer two particular questions. Okay. Here's the first thing to realize. When a monopoly owns both the north side and the south side, this monopoly will set prices Pn and Ps such that the joint profit will be maximized. Okay? This monopoly will not care whether the south is making more than the north, or the north is making more than the south, or the south is completely shut off. The monopolist wouldn't care at all. Okay? Now, the profit of the monopolies will again be a function of Pn and Ps, but it will be formed from the profit of the south side plus the profit of the north side. Okay. So the monopolist problem is to find the Pn and the Ps that maximize their profit. If you look at the suggested solution using an Excel grid, effectively what it's trying to do is envision a three-dimensional space. You have Pn here, and you have Ps here, and you have profit of the monopolies here on the length here. And really what you should kind of envision is something kind of looks like a cupola, like something that would look like this, perhaps. Right? And really what you're trying to do is you're trying to find this point, right, where this set of prices gives you that highest profit. Okay, you're trying to find a set of prices such that that monopoly profit is maximized. Okay, now calculus dictates that at this particular point here, there will be two conditions that will hold. Condition number one will be that the partial derivative of the profit of the monopolies with respect to Pn will equal to 0. And the partial derivative of the profit of the south side with respect to Ps will also equal to 0. And these conditions must hold at the same time. So, if you think about how we solved question 1, we figured out a best response function for the south side. How did we do it? We focused on the profit of the south side. We differentiated the profit of the south side with respect to the price of the south side and set it equal to 0. We focus on the profit of the north side, differentiated with respect to the north side, set it equal to 0. We figured out the best response function. We had a best response function for the south, we had a best response function for the north. We solved them simultaneously to find the optimal prices. Here, we're going to do something similar. But we're going to take the profit function of the monopolies, differentiated with respect to n, the profit function of the monopolies, differentiated with respect to s. You're going to have two equations, two unknowns, that will give you the optimal price. The tools that you're going to be using are identical, are the same as the ones that you've used before. Okay? Same as the one you've used before. Two equations, two unknowns, solve, done. Now, I don't want to solve it because it's tedious, the numbers are hideous, and it's not examinable. Okay? So you're not going to see an exam, something like this, that would require you to use calculus. However, there is two questions that I would like you to be able to answer. One is a bit easier, and the other one is a bit harder, especially if you were to answer it in a more general fashion. Let me ask you the easier question. If I calculate the joint profit under competition under question 1, and the joint profit under this monopoly set in question 5, where do you think the profits would be higher and why?
Intuitively, when they're joint.
Of course, intuitively when they're joint. Why is that? Can you give a bit more of a mathematical explanation why it will definitely be the case that it will be higher under question 5? Why would it be higher under question 5?
Mathematically?
Yeah, mathematically. It will be higher because whatever price came out in question one, whatever price pair came up in question one, can you still use it under monopoly? Of course you can if you want to. There's nothing that prevents you from using it. So you can always replicate the profit under question one by just setting the same price for the north side and the south side that you got in question one. But because you're a monopoly, you can likely do better. You have more freedom now as a monopoly because you can coordinate PS and PN as you please. But that's an easier question. You should always know that under this monopoly outcome or collusive outcome, you can always reach the equilibrium outcome. So of course the profit can only improve. They cannot get worse. Okay? Here is a slightly harder question. Especially it's harder to give the right why. Right? Onto this. Where do you think the prices are going to be higher? Are they going to be higher under question 5 or are they going to be higher under question 1?
Is this absolute? Like, doesn't it depend on? Could it be both ways?
In this case, we can easily show that it's going to be only one way. It's only going to be one way. Anyone can come up with an answer? Would you expect the prices to be higher or do you expect the prices to be lower under setting 5? Would be higher. Why? The why is the more difficult one.
Well, I mean, you're a monopoly, so you're not competing with anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, one possible answer is to say you're a monopoly, you're not competing with anyone else, so you'd expect prices to be higher.
That's again the elasticity thing.
That actually will not work as an argument for why. That would be unsatisfactory, and I'll show you in a second why it's not going to work. I'll give you a counterexample where that's not going to work. In this particular exercise here, it is true that prices will be higher. Okay? Why is the more difficult and the harder answer to get to. So let me try and explain that. South pizza and North pizza are substitute goods, meaning what happens to the demand for the North side if the South raises their prices? Increases, right? So when the North side, right, increases their prices, the South side benefits, right? If you're separate businesses and you're competing with one another, you would like to go to your neighbor and tell them, hey, North, can you raise your prices? Because my demand goes up when you do so. Right? When these two firms are competing, does the North care that by raising the price, they benefit the South?
Yes.
Do they care?
Well, they're competing.
They know about it, but do they care about it? They only care about their own profit. When we looked at an equilibrium, we only focused all our attention to our own profit. In other words, the North side will completely ignore this extra benefit that happens to the South side every time they raise prices. Conversely, when they lower prices, what happens to the North side? They get hurt. They will also ignore that because they don't care about the profit of the competitor. They only care about their own profits. Okay? When you are a monopoly, you will internalize this extra benefit. You will say, aha, if I raise the price on the South side, the North side will benefit. And if I raise the price on the North side, the South side will benefit. And I care about it because it's the same pocket, right? Or it's a different pocket of the same individual, right? Which means that the monopolist will have an incentive to raise prices even further. And what you'd realize with this is that for both North and the South, they will end up with a higher price. The key bit there is that these two goods were substitutes. I could have given you a different example where I could have taken these demand functions and I could have said, forget about it, this is not positive, so these things were positive, right? And now I tell you, forget about it, they're not positive, they're negative. So if the price of your competitor goes up, what happens to your demand? Goes down. Let's think of an example just to put things into perspective, okay? Let's say that Michael is a printer producer. He only produces the printer machines, okay? But I'm the paper producer. He doesn't have access to paper, right? He only has access to printer. We have the same consumers that we need to face, okay? Michael sets the price of the printer individually. I set the price of the paper individually. When I raise the price of my paper, what happens to the demand for printers? Goes down. Michael gets hurt. Do I care? No, if we're competing, I only care about my own profits. Okay? I do care about how Michael will respond to my prices, because eventually I want to reach an equilibrium where none of us have an incentive to unilaterally deviate, but I really don't care about his profits, beyond the fact of telling me something about how he will behave. Okay? Now, here's the interesting bit. Imagine that we're competing, we set prices, we get to some equilibrium prices. What do you think will happen to the equilibrium prices if me and Michael colluded and became one unit as a monopoly? Say that again?
Go up.
If you use the argument that, oh, I'm now a monopolist, I can raise the prices, you might be tempted to say that they will go up. But in fact, prices will go down. And the reason why they will be going down is because the moment I am a monopoly, I realize that when Michael raises the prices, I get hurt as the paper producer. So I internalize that cost by lowering prices. Now, don't confuse one thing. Both me and Michael, when we colluded, we lowered prices. Did our profits go down?
No.
Of course not. Because we always had the option to go back to the higher prices that we ended up when we were competing. But those higher prices were not profitable for us. So the monopoly internalizes that cost and lowers the prices. So here's some important lessons that you can learn out of this exercise. If you are a competition authority, okay, and you have two firms that come to you and they want to merge. If you have Sainsbury and Tesco trying to merge together, how would you treat that differently between having a printer producer and a paper producer trying to merge together?
Substitutes and compromise.
Yeah.
So one you said the price ceiling and the other you said the price minimum.
If you have Tesco and Sainsbury getting together, you would expect prices to go up for the consumers because they're substitute goods. You might be concerned as a competition authority and you might say, actually, I don't want prices for the consumers to go up. Right? I don't want monopoly behavior here. Now, if you had a printer manufacturer and a paper manufacturer and they were trying to merge, what would you say then?
That's fine because prices.
That's fine because prices will go down. Right? That's where economic theory leads you to very different results where your intuition might have failed you. Okay? Your intuition might have told you that the prices should always go up when you're a monopoly, when you go from competition to monopoly. But here's a case where prices will actually go down and consumers will benefit from a monopoly structure rather than competition. Consumers don't want me and Michael to compete if we're in complementary goods. Okay? And so should competition authorities if they're studying these particular cases.